Welcome in, everyone. If you are the kind of curious learner who appreciates a quick but incredibly thorough unpacking of complex topics, you are in exactly the right place today.
Absolute.
We know you value getting past the surface level without, feeling absolutely buried in information overload. And that's our mission today. We're taking a deep dive into a really fascinating YouTube documentary. It's by a creator named Willie Fungo.
Right.
And the video is titled Shocking: How Their ICH Party in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Yeah, and that title, I mean, it certainly sets a very specific expectation right out of the gate.
Oh, definitely.
But what makes this source material so compelling is that it actually serves as a window into something much larger.
Hmm.
Our goal here is to really look past those typical global media narratives you hear about South Africa.
Hmm.
We want to explore the surprising on-the-ground realities of wealth, race, and culture in Africa's rainbow nation, focusing specifically on its undeniable economic heartbeat, which is Johannesburg.
Okay, let's unpack this because, wow, there is a lot to take in here. And the visual contrasts are just staggering from the very first frame. We have a lot of ground to cover today, from high-end nightlife to the daily realities of security and social dynamics. So, as my analytical guide, how are we going to tackle this material?
Well, my approach is to synthesize the first-hand boots-on-the-ground observations from the documentary with the broader socioeconomic context of the country.
Got it.
We want to ensure that you, the listener, get a balanced, truly insightful view of Johannesburg. We'll connect those micro-interactions like, say, a conversation in a taxi or the music playing in a speakeasy to the macro realities of living in a society with such unique historical and economic conditions. And we'll do it all without getting bogged down in academic jargon.
Perfect. So the adventure in the video starts in Rosebank. And this is a highly walkable, high-end neighborhood located in the northern part of Johannesburg. Right off the bat, there is this incredibly vivid detail that just stops you in your tracks. Fungo's footage shows street performers right in the middle of this luxury shopping district, but they're dressed up as traditional miners.
Yeah.
It's a very striking visual juxtaposition.
It really is, but if we connect this to the bigger picture, that visual makes perfect sense. Johannesburg isn't just a random financial hub. It is literally the site of the greatest gold rush in human history.
Wow.
The documentary highlights that at one point, an eye-popping 70% of the world's entire gold supply came from the mines surrounding this single city.
70%, that is insane.
Right. So the performers are a nod to a profession that the ancestors of many locals likely held. It's this physical, street-level reminder of the very foundation of the city's immense wealth.
Although the modern economy of Johannesburg has clearly shifted since then, the source material mentions that while South Africa remains a major global gold producer, mining now represents just under 7% of the country's total GDP.
Exactly. It's financial and business services driving the wealth we see in places like Rosebank today.
Right. But that history is still right there on the sidewalk, intersecting with present-day social dynamics. And we see this really clearly when the camera moves toward a place called The Zone.
Ah, yes, the Zone. It's this large, mixed-use outdoor shopping center filled with bars and restaurants, and it serves as a great visual representation of the Rainbow Nation moniker. The video captures the main demographics: Black, white, Indian, and colored populations, all represented in this shared commercial space.
Let's actually pause on that demographic breakdown for a second. The documentary uses the term colored populations. Now, for listeners in the US or Europe, that word carries a lot of heavy, offensive historical baggage.
It does.
How should a global audience understand that term in the context of South Africa?
That is a crucial piece of cultural context. In South Africa, colored is not an antiquated racial slur like it is in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It refers to a very specific, legally and culturally recognized multiracial ethnic group.
Okay.
The colored community in South Africa has its own distinct, rich history, its own dialects, and a massive cultural footprint, particularly down in regions like the Western Cape, though they're heavily represented in Johannesburg as well. Failing to understand it as a distinct cultural identity often leads to significant confusion for international observers.
That makes the visual of everyone mingling freely in the zone make a lot more sense. The documentary makes a point to observe how these different groups interact, and it draws a very specific comparative analysis regarding the white population in South Africa versus white Americans. Fungo observes that, despite shared ancestral roots, white South Africans have a remarkably different cultural vibe. He attributes part of this to their culture developing in a relatively untamed land, completely distinct from continental Europe.
And what's fascinating here is how that translates to spatial behavior. The documentary notes that white South Africans appear profoundly less fearful of black people than white Americans often do. They seem remarkably relaxed and comfortable navigating these highly diverse, bustling environments.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The source material offers a hypothesis for that comfort level. It suggests this stems from the fact that white South Africans are entirely accustomed to living as a demographic minority,
Right.
whereas white Americans, generally speaking, are not.
This raises an important point about how our daily environments and demographic realities shape our baseline spatial and social comfort levels. In South Africa, the white population makes up roughly 7 to 8% of the country.
Just 7 to 8%.
Exactly. When you're a demographic minority in a space every single day of your life, your navigational norms naturally adapt to that reality. You don't have the luxury or the isolation, really, of existing in a homogeneous bubble. That constant, necessary interaction breeds a certain type of spatial adaptability that the creator found notably absent in similar American demographics.
That adaptability is fascinating, but it's also interesting to see how an outsider attempts to adapt to that exact same environment. The video shows a brief interaction with an American expat or tourist named Jeremy right there on the street.
Oh, Jeremy, yeah.
Jeremy mentions that South Africa has been surprisingly easy to acclimate to because of familiar conveniences. However, he brings up this warning he received from local friends about the nightlife.
Let me guess, they warned him about the crime rate or navigating the city at night?
You would think so, but actually no. They warned him about the sheer stamina required. Yeah, he was told that if you go out and really hit the town in Johannesburg, there is absolutely no chance of getting back home before 4 or 5 a.m. The nightlife culture is a total all-night affair.
That speaks to a very vibrant, energetic culture around leisure. But how people actually organize themselves during those late-night hours reveals a highly complex layer of Johannesburg's social fabric.
The video captures one of the most striking observations about the geography of this nightlife. There's a stark contrast with the United States. In the U.S., the documentary notes that different demographics or races tend to party on completely different sides of a city.
Right.
But in Johannesburg, people party on the exact same street.
But they aren't necessarily walking through the same doors, are they?
And that is the catch. You can look at one club where almost the entire clientele is black, and literally right next door, sharing the exact same sidewalk, there will be another club where almost everyone is white, Indian, or colored. They share the macro space of the neighborhood, but the micro spaces of the clubs themselves are highly segregated.
We're seeing a form of voluntary microsegregation happening within completely shared macro spaces. The broader environment, the street, the commercial district is integrated. But when it comes to intimate, chosen leisure time, the social sorting happens at the threshold of the venue.
If the legal and macro-geographic boundaries have dissolved to the point where everyone is on the same street, why do people immediately self-segregate the second they cross the threshold of a nightclub? Is it simply a matter of differing tastes in music, or is it something deeper?
It's likely a combination of both. Cultural clustering often dictates where people choose to spend their most unguarded hours. Music, fashion, and social networks are still heavily influenced by cultural background. While the public square is shared, the private or semi-private leisure spaces often revert to zones of cultural familiarity.
To give us a feel for what these venues actually look and feel like, the documentary takes us inside a few of them. The first is an upscale lounge in Rosebank called Omen. It features a relaxed atmosphere with mixed drinks, snacks, conversation-friendly music, and reasonable prices. Then there is Dinner at the Grill House, which is a high-end steakhouse with beautiful wood paneling. The creator highlights South Africa's reputation for incredibly high-quality beef, comparing the filet to U.S. chains like Outback Steakhouse or Logan's Roadhouse.
Those sound like sophisticated, relatively universal high-end dining experiences, but the social dynamics usually shift as the night progresses into more specialized venues.
They really do. Attached to the grill house is a speakeasy called Catsy's. It has an entrance fee of 200 Rand, which is about 12 US dollars. The source notes this is pricier than typical venues, but it features a live band. And given the setting and the economic hub of Africa, I fully expected to hear Afrobeats, Amapiano, or some localized indigenous style of music. What do you think that live band was actually playing?
Well, the documentary highlights a fascinating paradox here. The band was playing 70s and 80s American soul and R&B.
Yes. The creator is thrilled because it's his favorite genre, but he estimates that American music is what you hear around 90% of the time in the country. Other parts of the continent have heavily embraced their own modern indigenous styles, but South Africans still deeply love this specific era of American music.
Styles like classic soul and R&B have, in many ways, faded from the mainstream in their country of origin, yet they remain beloved across multiple generations in South Africa. However, this deep cultural embrace of American media comes with a significant and complicated caveat, which the creator explicitly notes.
Yes, the paradox is striking. Despite this massive overconsumption of U.S. media and music, the documentary observes a peculiar obsessive resentment toward Americans among much of the population. The creator compares it to attitudes found in Europe, where cultural exports are eagerly consumed, but the geopolitical sentiment is quite cynical. Remember, we're just reporting what the creator observed here.
Of course. And this is a classic example of cognitive dissonance on a societal level and requires a bit of unpacking. A culture can consume the artistic output of another nation, adopting its soundtracks for their most joyful, intimate moments, while simultaneously holding complex, negative views of the nation that produced it.
So, what does this all mean? Where does that specific resentment stem from if they love the art so much?
It often stems from a reaction to American cultural and geopolitical hegemony. People can deeply resonate with African-American art forms like soul and R&B, recognizing a shared history of struggle and resilience, while simultaneously resenting the broader American geopolitical empire.
That makes sense.
The resentment is usually directed at perceived American arrogance or dominance on the world stage, rather than the artists who created the music playing in the speakeasy. It's a reminder that cultural consumption does not automatically equal cultural endorsement of the state.
That distinction makes a lot of sense. And speaking of complex, layered realities, the documentary moves from Rosebank to Sandton. Sandton is widely known as the richest square mile in Africa. It's full of corporate skyscrapers and upscale post-work spots, like a restaurant called Solo, where the creator stops to enjoy some chicken tacos.
Right.
But it's a conversation during transit that yields one of the most sobering moments of the entire deep dive.
The conversation with the local driver. This provides a really raw, unfiltered look at the daily psychological toll of living in the city.
Exactly. The creator gets into a candid chat with his driver, who expresses some profound personal cynicism. The driver claims that while South African women are beautiful, he views them as crooks who only smile at money. He tells the creator he doubts he will ever get married because he simply cannot trust people's motives.
You can't just brush past that comment as simple personal bitterness. When the driver says people only smile at money, he is verbalizing the psychological impact of living in a hyper-capitalist, highly unequal environment. In societies where the wealth gap is massive and daily economic survival is a struggle for the majority, financial desperation often dictates interpersonal relationships. The driver's cynicism is a symptom of a society where trust is eroded by the transactional nature of simply trying to survive.
And that daily struggle for survival extends beyond just economics. It directly affects physical safety. The driver gives the creator a very serious piece of advice about navigating the city at night. He says that when you come to a robot, which is the local term for a traffic light, you cannot just stop and wait for it to turn green.
Yeah.
You have to check and bounce, you slow down, make sure the intersection is clear, and intentionally run the red light.
Because remaining stationary in a vehicle at night makes you a target for carjackings or robberies. It's a jarring juxtaposition. You go from discussing the nuances of American soul music in a high-end speakeasy to being told you must treat traffic lights as yield signs to avoid being victimized. It highlights a pervasive underlying tension that all the luxury in Sandton cannot completely wall off.
That pervasive tension brings us to the final and perhaps most surreal stop of the night. Monte Casino, located in Four Ways, Sandton. It is a massive entertainment complex designed to look exactly like a quaint rustic Tuscan village. There are cobblestone streets, faux Italian shop fronts, and a ceiling painted to look like a twilight sky. It is a completely manufactured environment.
A manufactured environment that serves as a fascinating sociological petri dish.
The creator plays blackjack for the first time and ends up doubling his money. But the most important observation isn't the gambling itself, it's the demographic makeup of the people inside this Tuscan village.
This is where we need to synthesize the statistical data with the lived experience shown in the footage. The global media narrative regarding South Africa almost entirely revolves around its extreme income inequality. South Africa has a Gini coefficient of 67.
For listeners who might not be familiar with that metric, what exactly does a 67 indicate?
The Gini coefficient is a statistical measure of wealth distribution across a population. A score of 0 means perfect equality, where everyone has the exact same income. A score of 100 means perfect inequality, where one person has all the wealth.
Okay.
A score of 67 ostensibly ranks South Africa as the most unequal country in the world.
When you hear most unequal country in the world, you naturally imagine a society where the rich and the poor live in completely isolated, heavily fortified bubbles, never crossing paths. But the on-the-ground reality at Monte Cassino shows something entirely different.
Exactly. The statistics give us the math, but they don't tell the story of how space is actually used.
The entrance fee to this massive, luxurious-looking casino is incredibly low, less than $5 US. Because of that low barrier to entry, the creator notes that everyone mixes freely. You literally have multimillionaires, local taxi drivers, and newly arrived immigrants all standing shoulder to shoulder, gambling under this painted Italian sky.
It highlights the physical, geographic proximity of this immense wealth gap. And that proximity isn't just an anomaly inside a casino, it is baked into the very urban planning of Johannesburg.
The documentary illustrates this with a staggering geographical fact. Alexandra, which is the largest slum in the Gauteng province, is located just 15 minutes away from downtown Sandton. The richest square mile on the entire African continent is only a 15-minute drive from sprawling, informal settlements.
That is the true value of looking past the statistical headlines. In many Western cities, poverty is often pushed to the distant peripheries or isolated in very specific urban decay zones. In Johannesburg, the first world and the third world don't just exist in the same country. They are practically neighbors.
The creator marvels at how seamlessly a person can step between those two worlds without missing a beat. You can be sitting in a high-rise corporate boardroom, and a 15-minute drive later, you are navigating the realities of Alexandra.
It forces a daily confrontation with inequality that simply doesn't exist in the same way in cities where wealth and poverty are separated by hours of transit. Observing a millionaire and a driver play cards at the same table, or noting the micro-segregation on a shared street of nightclubs, gives us the human reality behind the Gini coefficient.
This has been such a fascinating journey through the source material. To quickly summarize the key takeaways for you listening, we've explored how Johannesburg's massive gold rush history literally shapes its modern streets, with performers dressed as miners standing outside luxury shops. We analyzed the unique social dynamics, like white South Africans navigating diverse spaces with an ease born of being a demographic minority, and that complex micro-segregation of nightlife where different demographics party in separate clubs on the exact same shared street.
We also unpack the cultural dissonance of a society that deeply consumes and loves American soul and R&B music, playing it in high-end speakeasies, while simultaneously harboring a complex resentment toward American cultural and geopolitical hegemony. We looked at how extreme inequality breeds cynicism and necessitates security measures like running red lights at night.
And finally, we looked at the jarring, seamless physical proximity of extreme wealth and poverty. A reality where you can go to a faux Tuscan village for $5 and rub elbows with the ultra-rich just 15 minutes away from the largest slum in the province.
It is a city defined by incredible resilience, stark economic contrasts, and a deeply vibrant cultural life.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. Before we sign off, we want to leave you with a final, provocative thought to mull over or explore on your own. We've talked a lot about the physical proximity of different classes in Johannesburg, but if spatial proximity doesn't automatically dissolve socioeconomic boundaries, as we saw with the multimillionaires and taxi drivers sharing the same casino floor, or the slum sitting just 15 minutes from the richest square mile in Africa, how much does the physical design of our shared entertainment spaces actually influence our sense of shared humanity? Does a faux Tuscan village with a $5 entry fee truly bridge the gap between the first and third world? Or does it just provide a temporary painted sky illusion for both sides of the divide? Something to think about. Until next time, keep digging deeper.